Ladies and gentlemen, you've spent your whole life surrounded by people. You've watched them speak, move, smile, hesitate, avoid, hide, pretend, react, or stay silent. And yet, for most of your life, no one taught you how to truly understand them. No one explained the patterns beneath their words, the stories beneath their expressions, or the motives hiding behind their actions. And because of that, you've probably misread people more times than you can count. You think you're a good judge of character. Most people do. But the truth is unsettling. What we call intuition is often just memory, bias, projection, or fear disguised as confidence. We don't see people as they are. We see them as we are. We misunderstand their intentions, misinterpret their emotions, and falsely assume we already know what something means. And every time we do that, we pay a price. Trust lost, opportunities missed, relationships drained, respect weakened. In a world where communication shapes everything, your work, your friendships, your influence, misreading people is not a small flaw. It's a silent barrier to the life you want. Human behavior is not random. It looks messy on the surface, but underneath there are clear patterns, psychological rules that guide what people feel, say, and do. When you learn those rules, something remarkable happens. People stop being mysteries. Their reactions begin to make sense. Their contradictions become predictable. Their intentions become visible long before they express them. Suddenly, the world is quieter, simpler, easier to navigate. And instead of being overwhelmed by someone's tone, expression, or behavior, you begin to see the deeper story unfolding inside them. That's what this audiobook is about. Not tricks, not manipulation, not pop psychology myths, but a deep shift in the way you look at people. You will learn why human behavior almost never comes from the moment you're watching, but from the emotions, beliefs, wounds, and fears shaped long before it. You will see how micro-expressions reveal what the heart tries to hide. You'll understand why tone tells the truth when words don't. You'll discover how posture and movement expose the tension someone refuses to speak. You'll learn to recognize when someone is lying, not because of a magic sign, but because they suddenly stop acting like themselves. You'll understand personalities, motives, insecurities, and patterns with a clarity most people never experience. And the most transformative part is this. When you learn to read people, you don't just understand them, you finally understand yourself. Because every reaction you have to someone else is also a window into your own psychology, your boundaries, your fears, your expectations, your emotional habits. To read people is to understand the world, but to understand why you interpret them the way you do, that's how you understand your identity. Across the next 12 chapters, you will step into a new kind of awareness. You will learn to observe before you interpret. You will see emotions appear on the face before they ever turn into words. You will hear the truth hidden inside a voice. You will recognize defensive body language, disrupted emotional baselines, hidden motives, cognitive biases, and the influence of social environments. You will learn to identify manipulation, protect your energy, and respond with clarity instead of reacting out of confusion. By the time you finish, people will stop surprising you. Not because you can predict everything they do, but because you finally understand the structure beneath human behavior. And perhaps for the first time, you'll walk into a room and feel calm. Not because the room is calm, but because you are no longer guessing. You are seeing. You are decoding. You are understanding what others cannot. This audiobook won't teach you how to control people. It will teach you how to see them. And when you can see people clearly, when you truly understand what drives them, you gain something far more powerful than control. You gain clarity, you gain peace, you gain confidence, because nothing is more grounding than knowing what you're looking at and trusting your ability to read the truth beneath the surface. So, take a breath, settle in, and let's begin with the first skill, the skill that every great observer, negotiator, leader, partner, and communicator masters long before anything else. The ability to pay attention. Chapter 1. The first rule: observe before you interpret. Chapter 1. The first rule: observe before you interpret. Most people don't actually see others. They only react to their own assumptions. You will never understand human behavior if you rush to interpret what you haven't taken the time to observe. We move through life believing we read people well, but most of what we call intuition is just a reflection of our own fears, memories, and biases. We project more than we perceive. We judge faster than we notice. And in that rush, we misunderstand people who were never trying to hurt us, never trying to disrespect us, never trying to push us away. They were simply being themselves. Observation is the doorway. Interpretation is the hallway. You cannot walk the hallway if you never open the door. Before you can understand anyone, you must learn to pause, not mentally run ahead, not fill in the blanks, just pause. If you've spent your life reacting instantly to tone, to expressions, to behaviors, then you've probably been reacting to your own story, not theirs. And that's why relationships get confusing. That's why people surprise you. That's why you get hurt without knowing why. You cannot understand a person while you're trapped inside your own head. To observe someone is to step outside your assumptions and into the present moment. It means learning to see, not just look. It means paying attention to the details that reveal more than the words ever could. When you shift from reacting to observing, the world slows down. You begin to notice patterns you never saw before. People reveal themselves through their baseline, their natural way of being. A baseline is the rhythm of someone's emotional and physical expression when they are calm, unthreatened, and unguarded. And everyone has one. Some speak quickly even when relaxed. Some avoid eye contact even when confident. Some talk with their hands, some remain still. None of these actions mean anything until they change. The truth appears when the baseline breaks. A sudden shift is more revealing than the behavior itself. When someone who is normally expressive becomes still, something changed. When someone who rarely fidgets begins to adjust their clothes or touch their face, something is happening inside them. When someone who speaks softly suddenly raises their voice, they're trying to protect a boundary. These deviations aren't accidents, they're emotional signals. People don't hide their emotions as well as they think. They only hide them from people who aren't paying attention. But most people aren't paying attention because they're too focused on themselves. Do they like me? Am I being judged? What do I say next? This noise blocks true perception. You cannot observe clearly while fighting for self-approval in your mind. When you finally allow silence inside yourself, you create space to observe others. And in that space, the smallest details become loud. The tightening of a jaw, the hesitation before agreeing, the shift of feet away from you, the flicker of discomfort when a certain topic comes up. These subtle cues are more honest than words because the body speaks before the mind can edit. If the words say yes but the body says no, trust the body. Imagine meeting someone for the first time. The first 30 seconds reveal everything you need to understand the next 30 minutes. If you know how to watch, notice their natural pace. Notice whether their posture leans toward you or away from you. Notice the tension in their shoulders. Notice whether their smile reaches their eyes. Notice if their words match their emotional tone. Your job is not to judge these signals. Your job is to record them, to build a baseline. Once you understand a person's baseline, you gain access to the truth hidden in their deviations. And suddenly, human behavior stops being a mystery. You understand nervousness. You recognize interest. You detect discomfort. You sense when someone is protecting a wound. You see the shift before they even express it. Observation protects you from reacting to a story you invented instead of the truth that's standing in front of you. And when you observe long enough, something profound happens. Empathy grows. Not the soft, sentimental kind, but the grounded. Chapter 2. Micro-expressions. emotions exposed in half a second, understanding that people behave based on internal worlds you cannot see. The moment you honor that truth, your reactions become wiser. Your responses become clearer. Your relationships become calmer. To understand people, you must first understand the moment before, meaning that moment is an observation. Interpretation comes later, reaction comes last, and wisdom comes from putting them in the right order. This is the foundation. Everything else you learn, micro-expressions, tone, body, language, motives, patterns, depends on your ability to do this. First, observe, then understand, then respond. Chapter 2, Micro-expressions, emotions exposed in half a second. The face tells the truth long before the mouth does. And if you learn to read it, you will understand people faster than they can hide their intentions. Micro-expressions are the emotional leaks the human brain cannot fully control. They flash across the face in less than half a second. Too fast to fake, too raw to disguise, too honest to ignore. You've seen them your entire life without recognizing them. The quick tightening of lips, the sudden lift of eyebrows, the brief flash of contempt or fear before someone forces a smile. These tiny moments are emotional fingerprints, and once you learn to see them, you cannot unsee them. A micro-expression is the closest thing to emotional truth you will ever witness. Most people think emotions live in the words. They don't. Words can be rehearsed. Tone can be softened. Body language can be trained or masked. But the muscles in the face betray what the mind tries to control. That betrayal reveals what someone genuinely feels, even when they don't want you to know it. There are 7 universal micro-expressions recognized across all cultures: anger, fear, sadness, disgust, contempt, happiness, and surprise. You already know them instinctively. A slight raising of the inner eyebrows shows sadness. A one-sided smirk signals contempt. Wide eyes show surprise. Narrowed eyes and tightened lips reflect anger. The nose wrinkle shows disgust. These signals appear instantly and disappear before the conscious mind can intervene. You can't fake a micro-expression. You can only reveal it. Consider a moment when someone pretended to be fine, but something felt off. You couldn't explain why, but you sensed the truth. That feeling came from a micro-expression your brain noticed, even if you didn't consciously register it. Humans evolved to detect micro-shifts in the face for survival, to sense danger, deception, or emotional tension. But modern life distracts us from noticing what our brain has been trained for thousands of years to catch. Reading micro-expressions doesn't require special talent. It requires presence. You must learn to slow down your mind enough to see what happens in those tiny emotional flickers. When someone hears something they don't like, their eyebrows pull together before they force a neutral expression. When someone is afraid, their eyes widen for a moment before they try to look composed. When someone feels contempt, the most dangerous emotion in relationships, the corner of their mouth lifts on one side for a fraction of a second. Contempt is the facial warning sign that a relationship is in trouble. Never ignore it. Micro-expressions don't tell you why someone feels something. They tell you that they feel something, and that something matters more than the story they're trying to present. Because people lie with words, but their emotional reflexes don't lie with them. When reading micro-expressions, context matters. A person may squint because of the sun, not because of anger. They may widen their eyes because they're surprised by a noise, not a comment. They may frown because they're thinking, not because they disagree. Micro-expressions are most powerful when combined with the moment, the topic, the tone, and most importantly, the person's baseline behavior. Never interpret a single signal. Interpret the pattern. When a micro-expression appears, treat it like a clue, not a conclusion. It's an emotional spark that points you toward the truth. Follow that spark. Observe the reaction that comes next. Ask yourself, did their tone shift? Did their body tighten? Did they look away? Did their breathing change? These subtle responses combined with the micro-expression create a clearer picture of what's happening inside them. Micro-expressions reveal not just emotions, but emotional conflict. Someone may smile while their eyes show fear. Someone may agree while their face shows disgust. Someone may apologize while flashing contempt. These emotional contradictions expose the gap between what a person feels and what they choose to show. Whenever someone's face reveals one truth and their words reveal another, trust the face. Learning to see micro-expressions changes the way you interact with people. You become more patient because you understand what they're actually feeling. You become more grounded because you no longer rely solely on words. You become less reactive because you see the emotion before it becomes behavior. And you become more compassionate because you finally understand the hidden battles behind someone's expression. This skill is not about judgment. It's about clarity. It's about connection. It's about giving yourself the ability to understand others in real time, some without guessing. Micro-expressions are short, but their meaning lasts. And the moment you learn to read them, you begin to see people on a deeper, more honest level. When the face speaks, listen. It is telling you what the heart hasn't said yet. Chapter 3. The Voice Code. Chapter 3. The Voice Code. What tone reveals that words hide? What tone reveals that words hide? People lie with words far more easily than they lie with their voice. Tone is the emotional truth most people ignore. We grow up believing communication is about what people say. But if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling uneasy, confused, or suspicious, even when the words sounded right, you've already experienced something deeper. Your intuition wasn't reacting to the words. It was reacting to the tone beneath them. Tone is the emotional fingerprint of communication, and it reveals what the mind tries to hide. When the words and the tone don't match, believe the tone. Every voice carries clues in pace, pitch, volume, rhythm, and hesitation. These elements expose confidence, insecurity, anger, fear, discomfort, and dishonesty. The human brain is built to detect vocal changes. We simply don't pay attention consciously. But the moment you learn to notice, people begin to reveal themselves without trying. Think of someone saying, "I'm fine." Now, think of the hundreds of tones in which those same words can be spoken. The meaning isn't in the sentence. The meaning is in the sound. Tone reveals emotional states faster than facial expressions. A trembling voice shows fear long before the face does. A clipped, sharp delivery reveals irritation before the body reacts. A sudden softness can indicate guilt or uncertainty, and a flat, monotone response can conceal disengagement, resignation, or disappointment. Words are chosen. Tone is leaked. When someone is nervous, their pitch rises slightly and their sentences become shorter. Their breath becomes shallow and the voice may crack at the end. When someone is angry but trying to hide it, their tone becomes tighter, their pauses sharper, and their words feel compressed. When someone is confident, their voice moves with steady rhythm. No rushing, no shrinking, no unnecessary filler. Tone also exposes internal conflict. People often say yes with a tone that screams no. They agree while sounding hesitant. They compliment while sounding threatened. They apologize while sounding defensive. You don't need them to say their real feelings out loud. The tone already delivered the truth. A change in tone is a change in emotion. And emotion is always meaningful. Much like body language, tone must be compared to a baseline. Some people naturally speak fast. Others speak softly. Others sound monotone even when calm. None of these traits mean anything until they suddenly shift. When someone who normally speaks confidently becomes quiet, something happened. When someone who speaks softly suddenly gets louder, there is tension rising beneath the surface. When someone who avoids pauses begins pausing more, they're thinking carefully, often too carefully, about what to reveal. Tone is also shaped by pressure. In moments of stress, the voice tightens. In moments of fear, the breath shortens. In moments of uncertainty, the words lose their anchor. And in moments of dishonesty, the vocal cords struggle to stay consistent. The voice shakes before the lie does. Listening for tone means listening to how something is said, not just what is said. It means noticing the emotional weight behind the message, and it means allowing yourself to hear the truth, even when the other person is trying to steer you away from it. Tone pulls you into the emotional reality beneath the social mask. The more attuned you become to tone, the more compassionate you become. You don't just hear irritation, you hear the exhaustion underneath it. You don't just hear hesitation, you hear the fear of being misunderstood. You don't just hear a shaky voice. You hear someone trying desperately to stay composed. Listening deeply to tone isn't about judging others. It's about understanding them more fully. Tone is the bridge between emotion and language. If you can hear the bridge, you can read the person. When you begin listening this way, misunderstandings shrink, confusion fades, manipulation becomes easier to identify, and emotional clarity becomes the foundation of every conversation. Tone gives you early access to a person's truth before their words catch up. So the next time someone speaks to you, don't just listen to what they say. Listen to the breath behind it. Listen to the pauses they don't intend to make. Listen to the shakiness, the tightness, the lift, the drop, the hesitation, the rush, the softness. Each of these signals is a doorway into their emotional state. Words convince, tone reveals. And those who learn to hear tone understand people faster, deeper, and more honestly than anyone else in the room. Chapter 4, Body Language. The Chapter 4, Body Language, the silent story people tell. Silent story people tell. Before people speak, their body already told the truth. If you know how to read that truth, you understand people long before they decide what to reveal. Words are crafted. Tone is shaped. But the body is honest. It reacts faster than thought, faster than strategy, faster than self-control. Human beings evolved long before language existed, and our bodies learned to communicate danger, comfort, attraction, insecurity, and power without a single word. That instinct still lives inside us. The shoulders tense before the mind admits fear. The feet turn away before the voice expresses discomfort. The chest opens before the person realizes they feel safe. The body speaks first because survival speaks first. If you want to understand human behavior instantly, you must learn to read these primal signals, not as isolated gestures because one gesture means nothing, but as patterns, shifts, contradictions, and deviations from a person's natural baseline. Body language is divided into 4 key areas: the face, the torso, the arms, and the feet. But these aren't just regions of the body. They're regions of truth. Each reveals something different about what a person feels, wants, or avoids. And when you learn to read them together, you gain a quiet superpower, the ability to sense people's emotional state before they express it. The body cannot keep a secret the heart is trying to hide. Start with posture. Posture is emotional architecture. When someone feels confident, their spine lengthens, shoulders relax, and gestures expand into space. When someone feels unsure, they shrink. Shoulders curl inward, arms fold, movements become small and contained. These shifts don't require interpretation. They only require awareness. You don't judge them as good or bad. You simply observe that the body is reacting to something within. Now, look at micro movements of the torso. A person may face you with their shoulders, but angle their torso slightly away. That is emotional distance. The torso reveals who someone feels connected to and who they feel threatened by. When someone leans in subtly, they are drawn toward the conversation. When they lean back, they are protecting themselves or evaluating you more carefully. Even a 1-inch shift is meaningful if it breaks from their baseline. People move toward what they want and away from what they fear. This brings us to the arms, one of the most misunderstood areas of body language. Crossed arms are not always a sign of defensiveness. They can mean comfort, habit, or simply that the person is cold. But crossed arms combined with tightened shoulders, minimal hand movement, or downward tilting head, that's emotional withdrawal. That's a person closing themselves not out of rudeness but out of protection. Arms also reveal the difference between real confidence and performed confidence. Real confidence is relaxed, it flows. You see it in gestures that are purposeful but not exaggerated. Performed confidence is rigid. The arms become too still or too animated, as if the person is pushing their presence instead of embodying it. Confidence doesn't perform. Confidence exists. Now pay close attention to the hands. Hands betray anxiety faster than any other body part. People touch their neck when nervous, rub their palms when uncertain, or fiddle with objects when trying to ground themselves. These gestures aren't flaws. They're signals. They are the body's attempt to regulate emotion without words. But the most honest part of the body, the feet don't lie, feet don't pretend, feet don't care about social performance. People point their feet toward what they desire and away from what they wish to escape. If someone's feet are leaving the conversation while their upper body stays, their true intention is already moving on. You've likely felt it before. The subtle shift, the hidden retreat, the invisible distancing. The feet reveal what the person cannot yet admit, even to themselves. If you want to know where someone wants to be, look at their feet. Body language also reveals internal conflict. When someone says, "I'm comfortable," but their shoulders tighten and their feet angled toward the exit, trust the body. When someone says, "I'm not upset," but their jaw locks, trust the body. When someone says, "I agree," but their arms pull inward and their breath becomes shallow, trust the body. Contradictions aren't lies. They're emotional battles unfolding in real time. And reading those battles makes you wiser, calmer, and more grounded. Understanding body language is not about judging people. It's about freeing yourself from misunderstandings. It's about seeing what's actually happening instead of reacting to the surface. It gives you the gift of clarity, something most people don't have in conversation because they are too focused on what to say next rather than what the other person is communicating silently. You cannot read the body while you're rehearsing your lines in your head. When you finally become present enough to observe, people reveal themselves gently and constantly. Someone's breath slows when they trust you. Their shoulders drop when they feel understood. Their eyes soften when they feel safe. These small changes matter. They are the foundation of empathy, influence, connection, and emotional intelligence. Body language at its core is not a trick. It's a window into someone's emotional landscape, a window into what they fear, what they hope, what they avoid, and what they long for. When you learn to read the body, you learn to read the human soul. Because beneath every gesture is a story, and beneath every story is a truth, and the body tells that truth before the person ever finds the word. Chapter 5, Emotional Baselines, the secret to detecting lies. Emotional baselines. The secret to detecting lies. There is no universal sign of lying. There is only a change from what is normal for that person. Most people imagine liars fidget, look away, touch their face, blink rapidly, or sound nervous. But these behaviors are not signs of lying. They are signs of being human. A person might look away simply because they're thinking. They might fidget because they're anxious around you, not because they're hiding something. They might blink more because they're tired. If you treat every behavior as a red flag, you will misjudge people constantly. The truth is simple. You cannot detect lies unless you know someone's baseline. A baseline is a person's default emotional and behavioral pattern. It's how they look, move, breathe, gesture, speak, and respond when they're not under pressure. Baseline is stability. Baseline is normally. And without understanding it, any attempt at reading someone becomes guesswork. The secret to detecting lies is not learning what liars do. It's learning what this specific person does when they are calm. Only then can you recognize when something breaks away from that calm. A deviation is more revealing than a behavior. Think about someone who usually speaks quickly. If they suddenly slow down, that shift is meaningful. Think about someone who rarely fidgets. If they begin touching their neck or adjusting, their clothes. That shift speaks loudly. Think about someone who typically makes steady eye contact. If they suddenly avoid your eyes at one specific moment, that shift matters. The behavior itself means nothing without the baseline. That changes everything. When a person lies, the brain works harder. It must invent, edit, protect, conceal, and monitor. That mental load triggers micro tension throughout the body. The voice tightens, the breathing shifts, the face flashes emotional conflict, the shoulders rise slightly, the hands lose their rhythm. The answer comes too quickly or too slowly. A lie is rarely obvious, but the stress caused by lying always leaks out. One of the clearest signals of deception is a sudden change in detail. A person who normally speaks casually may give extremely long explanations. A person who normally gives details may suddenly become vague. Someone who usually answers immediately may stall. Someone who usually thinks first may suddenly speak too fast. The mind reveals deception through inconsistency. The body reveals deception through tension. The voice reveals deception through hesitation. But none of this is meaningful unless you compare it to the baseline. The question is never what did they do. The question is, do they normally do this? To identify deception, pay attention to the moment just before and just after a key question. The FBI uses this technique constantly. They don't only study the answer, they study the change. Did the person shift posture? Did their breathing change? Did their tone tighten? Did their gestures freeze? Did their face flash discomfort before they responded? These transitional moments matter more than the answer itself. One of the most overlooked signs of deception is overcorrection. When people lie, they often try too hard to appear natural. They hold too much eye contact. They become overly polite. They align their story too neatly. They eliminate all uncertainty in their tone. Real honesty is imperfect. Fabricated honesty is tidy. A truthful answer flows. A lie is structured. But remember this, not every baseline deviation means deception. Sometimes people get nervous because they fear being misunderstood. Sometimes they tense up because the topic is emotionally loaded. Sometimes they hesitate because they're ashamed or insecure. Emotional shifts reveal emotional truth. But emotional truth is not always deception. What matters is the cluster. Multiple changes happening around the same moment connected to a meaningful question or topic. If someone shifts posture, blinks rapidly, changes tone, and suddenly goes vague when you ask something specific, the cluster matters, the pattern matters, the timing matters. Lies happen in moments. Truth happens in patterns. When you understand someone's baseline, you gain the ability to differentiate discomfort from dishonesty, insecurity from deception, anxiety from intent to mislead. This protects you from misjudging good people and from trusting the wrong ones. Learning baselines is not just a skill, it's a kindness. It reduces false accusations. It increases empathy. It deepens insight. Because once you understand how someone behaves naturally, you stop assuming, you stop projecting, you stop overreacting, you stop mistaking fear for deceit and hesitation for guilt. The more you understand someone's normal, the more you can understand their truth. Baseline is the foundation of reading people. Without it, everything becomes noise. With it, the world becomes clear. And once you learn to see emotional deviations accurately, you unlock one of the rarest abilities in communication. The ability to detect what someone feels even when they desperately want to hide it. A lie might hide in the words, but the shift always exposes it. Chapter 6, Hidden Motives. Why people do what they... Chapter 6, Hidden Motives. Why people do what they do. People rarely say what they truly want, but they always show it in what they consistently do. Every behavior has a motive beneath it. Every reaction has a root. Every silence has a meaning. And once you understand the hidden motives driving people, their choices stop surprising you because you finally see the psychology underneath the action. If you want to understand someone instantly, stop listening to their words and start listening to their motives. The human mind is simple in one sense. We create complex behavior from a small set of psychological needs. These needs shape how we communicate, how we protect ourselves, how we approach relationships, and how we navigate conflict. When a need is threatened, the behavior becomes louder. When a need is unfulfilled, the behavior becomes persistent. When a need is met, the behavior softens and expands. There are 5 core motives that drive nearly all human behavior: safety, esteem, belonging, control, and reward. And the moment you recognize which of these is driving someone, their actions make complete sense, even the ones that seem irrational on the surface. No one is irrational. They're just motivated by something you haven't seen yet. Start with safety, the most primal motive. People need emotional, physical, and social safety. When someone feels unsafe, everything in their behavior tightens. Their tone, posture, face, and choices. They avoid risks. They avoid vulnerability. They avoid people who threaten their stability. Someone who cancels plans repeatedly may not be rude. They may be protecting emotional safety. Someone who overexplains may not be insecure. They may be seeking reassurance. Safety shapes behavior more than any other motive. Then comes esteem, the need to feel respected and valued. When esteem is threatened, people become reactive. They defend themselves quickly. They interrupt. They correct others. They become competitive. They seek validation through achievement or compliments. A person who argues constantly isn't always trying to win. Sometimes they're trying not to feel small. When esteem is the motive, behavior becomes sharp because the fear beneath it is sharp. People fight hardest when they fear losing their worth. Belonging is the third motive. The need to feel connected and accepted. Humans are social creatures. We read faces, tones, and gestures to understand our status in a group. When belonging is missing, people chase affection, approval, and connection. Someone may overly adapt to others to avoid conflict. Someone may laugh too loudly to fit in. Someone may stay in unhealthy relationships because loneliness feels worse than mistreatment. Belonging shapes behavior quietly but deeply. Control is the fourth motive, the need to feel agency over life. When someone feels powerless, their behavior becomes rigid or unpredictable. Some people dominate conversations, others withdraw, some micromanage, others avoid any situation where they could lose control. Remember, controlling behavior is rarely about controlling others. It's usually about trying to manage internal fear. When people can't control their emotions, they try to control their environment. The final motive is reward, the pursuit of gain, pleasure, advantage, or progress. Reward-driven behavior is easy to identify. People move toward what benefits them. They show enthusiasm, they invest more energy, they stay committed. When someone becomes inconsistent, the reward no longer outweighs the cost. Understanding this helps you stop taking withdrawal personally. Most behavior is not about you. It's about the reward they're seeking or losing. But here's the deeper truth. People rarely know which motive is driving them. They simply feel the push and follow it. Your job is not to judge the motive, but to recognize it. Because once you understand the motive behind someone's actions, you stop overreacting. Instead of getting offended, you become curious. Instead of assuming the worst, you understand the need beneath the behavior. This gives you clarity, peace, and emotional control. Motive reveals truth. Behavior is just the messenger. To read motives accurately, watch what repeats. Patterns don't lie. Someone who wants safety will always choose the familiar path. Someone who wants esteem will always seek acknowledgement. Someone who wants belonging will always move toward connection. Someone who wants control will always resist uncertainty. Someone who wants a reward will always move toward opportunity. But motives also reveal hidden wounds. If someone fears abandonment, belonging becomes their motive. If someone fears failure, control becomes their motive. If someone fears rejection, esteem becomes their motive. If someone fears chaos, safety becomes their anchor. If someone fears stagnation, reward becomes their drive. What people fear most is often what motivates them most. Understanding motives makes you emotionally stronger because it removes the mystery from people's behavior. You stop taking things personally. You stop misinterpreting reactions. You stop expecting others to act like you. And you stop being surprised by what people do because you finally see the psychological engine running beneath the surface. When you understand motives, you don't just understand behavior. You understand why the behavior exists, and that is the highest level of reading people. Once you see the motive, you see the human beneath the behavior, and once you see the human, everything makes sense. Chapter 7, Personality Patterns. Chapter 7, Personality Patterns, mapping predictable human behavior. Mapping predictable human behavior. People are not unpredictable. They are patterned, and once you learn the pattern, you learn the person. We like to believe everyone is unique, and in many ways they are. But human behavior falls into recognizable shapes. These shapes repeat across age, culture, personality, and circumstance. You've met these patterns in your family, your workplace, your relationships, your friendships, and even strangers walking past you. You just didn't know how to read them clearly. Personality patterns aren't about labels. They're about understanding how someone moves through the world. Every person leans toward one of 4 primary behavior orientations: dominant, analytical, expressive, or harmonizer. These aren't boxes. They are tendencies, default settings that shape how people communicate, make decisions, react under pressure, and connect with others. When you recognize these patterns, interactions become simpler, conflict becomes decipherable, people's choices become predictable. You begin to understand not just what someone does, but why they do it that way. Start with the dominant pattern, the person who moves fast, thinks fast, and speaks directly. Dominant individuals value efficiency, clarity, and results. They dislike hesitation. They dislike emotional clutter. They dislike inefficiency. Their tone is firm, their posture upright, their gestures sharp. When stressed, they become more intense, cutting to the point, interrupting, raising their volume, or taking charge even when no one asked them to. Dominant people aren't trying to intimidate you. They're trying to create certainty in a world that feels too slow for their mind. If you misread their intensity as aggression, friction appears. If you match their clarity with clarity, respect appears. Next is the analytical pattern. Calm, careful, detail-oriented, and thoughtful. These individuals need information before emotion. They analyze before they trust. They think before they speak. They question because they care about accuracy, not because they doubt you personally. Their tone is steady, their posture structured, their gestures minimal. When stressed, they withdraw inward, searching for data, logic, and control. Analytical people aren't cold, they're cautious. They don't connect through emotion. They connect through precision. If you push them to respond quickly, they freeze. But if you give them time to process, they open. Then comes the expressive pattern. Energetic, enthusiastic, emotionally open, and socially driven. Expressive individuals communicate with their whole body. Their hands move, their eyes widen, their voice rises and falls like music. They crave connection, excitement, and shared emotion. When stressed, their emotions intensify. They may overtalk, overshare, or jump between ideas rapidly. Not because they're scattered, but because their mind is overflowing. Expressive people aren't dramatic, they're passionate. They feel deeply, and feeling deeply is how they understand the world. If you dismiss their emotion, they shut down. If you honor their emotion, they bond. Finally, there is the harmonizer pattern. Gentle, patient, empathetic, and peace-oriented. These individuals value connection over confrontation. They read tone, energy, and emotion before they read content. They listen more than they speak. Their movements are soft. Their voice is warm. When stressed, they retreat emotionally, not to avoid you, but to avoid conflict. They may agree even when they disagree. They may fold even when they're hurting. Harmonizers aren't weak, they're protective. They guard their inner world carefully, and they give trust slowly. If you pressure them, they disappear. If you create safety, they bloom. Once you understand these 4 patterns, you begin to see the world in high resolution. You understand why some people raise their voice while others lower theirs. Why some need answers immediately while others need time. Why some thrive on emotion while others avoid it. Why some lead naturally while others support naturally. Understanding patterns does not replace empathy, it strengthens it. Instead of getting frustrated, you get curious. Instead of taking behavior personally, you understand the motive behind it. Instead of reacting to the surface, you connect to the personality underneath. People aren't difficult, they're different. Recognizing personality patterns also reveals how you operate. Are you the one who pushes for clarity? The one who needs time to think? The one who feels everything intensely? The one who prioritizes harmony at any cost? When you know your own pattern, you notice when stress pushes you into an extreme version of it. A dominant stress becomes forceful, an analytical becomes paralyzed, an expressive becomes chaotic, a harmonizer becomes avoidant. These extremes aren't flaws, they are signals calling you back to balance. Self-awareness is the first step to reading others. But reading others is the first step to a deeper connection. Personality patterns don't tell you everything, but they tell you enough to predict behavior, de-escalate conflict, build trust, communicate clearly, and understand people on a deeper level. People aren't puzzles, they're patterns. And once you learn those patterns, you navigate them with confidence, clarity, and compassion. Chapter 8: Cognitive Biases. How the mind distorts reality. Mind distorts reality. People don't react to reality, they react to the version of reality their mind creates. And that version is often distorted, incomplete, or entirely wrong. The human brain was not built for perfect perception. It was built for survival. It simplifies, filters, jumps to conclusions, fills in gaps, assumes motives, and creates meaning even when none exists. These shortcuts help us navigate life quickly, but they also cause us to misunderstand people, sometimes dramatically. If you want to understand human behavior, you must understand the biases shaping how people think. A cognitive bias is not a flaw. It is a mental habit, a shortcut the brain uses to conserve energy. But shortcuts skip truth. They skip nuance. They skip the full picture. And once a bias takes hold, the brain becomes blind to evidence that contradicts it. Bias makes people confident in conclusions they never actually examined. One of the most powerful biases is confirmation bias. The tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information that agrees with what we already believe. When someone thinks you don't like them, they'll notice every small signal that supports that belief and ignore every signal that disproves it. When someone thinks they're being judged, every neutral expression becomes criticism. Confirmation bias distorts perception until people see what they fear, not what's real. Next is the halo effect. The bias that makes one positive trait define how we see the entire person. If someone is attractive, confident, or charming, we assume they must also be ethical, intelligent, or trustworthy. This is why people fall for manipulative charm. The brain loves shortcuts, and the halo effect is one of its favorites. Then there is projection, the tendency to assign our own feelings, motives, or fears to others. If someone is insecure, they'll assume everyone else is judging them. If someone is untrustworthy, they'll suspect others of lying. Projection is powerful because it feels real. It makes us believe we're reading people accurately when we're actually reading ourselves. Projection is not insight. It's fear in disguise. Another common distortion is the fundamental attribution error. Our tendency to judge others by their character and ourselves by our circumstances. If someone is late, we assume they're irresponsible. If we are late, we say traffic was bad. This bias creates harsh judgments and unnecessary conflict because it removes context from someone's behavior. There's also the mind redating bias, believing we know what others think without evidence. He must be annoyed. She probably thinks I'm stupid. They're definitely judging me. This bias fuels anxiety and social misinterpretation. Most people don't realize how often they confuse imagination with reality. A bias doesn't feel like a guess. It feels like truth. That's why it's dangerous. To understand others, you must question the story your brain automatically generates. Ask yourself, is this their behavior or my interpretation? Is this fact or assumption? Is this emotion theirs or mine? When you slow down enough to ask these questions, you break the trance of bias. You begin to see others with clarity instead of projection. You stop confusing fear with intuition. You stop mistaking assumptions for insight, and you stop reacting to stories your mind invented. Understanding cognitive biases also helps you understand why people act in confusing or irrational ways. Most people don't see the world as it is. They see the world as they were taught to see it by their environment, childhood experiences, traumas, insecurities, and beliefs. When someone overreacts, it's rarely about the moment. It's about the lens they're looking through. People aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to their interpretation of you. This perspective brings compassion. It softens anger. It reduces conflict. It gives you a wider emotional map of what's happening inside the person in front of you. But it also brings responsibility. Your own biases distort your perception too. You are not immune. No one is. When you recognize your own cognitive biases, you gain self-control. You pause before assuming. You notice when your mind is exaggerating danger. You question your projections instead of believing them. You begin to separate what is real from what is imagined. Clarity begins when bias ends. To understand people, you must learn to see the world not as you wish it were, not as you fear it is, but as it actually is. And that requires looking past your mind's shortcuts, past its illusions, past its distortions. Because once you see through bias, your own and others, you begin to see people as they are, not as your mind paints them, not as your wounds color them, not as your fears decide them. When you remove the distortion, you finally see the truth. Chapter 9. Social context. The environment that Chapter 9. Social context, the environment that shapes behavior. People do not behave the same in every room. If you want to understand someone, you must understand the environment they are reacting to. Human behavior is not only internal, it is relational. It shifts depending on the space, the people present, the social pressure, the emotional temperature, and 1,000 invisible cues in the environment. Someone who is warm and open in private may become quiet in a group. Someone who is confident among friends may shrink in the presence of authority. Someone who seems reserved at work may be animated and expressive at home. We don't just read the person. We read the context surrounding the person. Every room has a psychological climate. Some rooms make people relax. Some rooms make people defend. Some rooms make people perform. Some rooms make people hide. When you observe human behavior without considering the environment, you'll misunderstand them. Because most people don't act according to who they truly are. They act according to what the moment demands. Behavior is adaptive. It bends to the room. It bends to the audience. It bends to the power dynamic. Consider how someone behaves when they sit with a close friend. Their shoulders drop. Their breath slows. Their laughter comes easily. Their posture opens. Now compare that to how the same person behaves in the presence of a boss, a rival, or a critical family member. Suddenly their tone becomes careful. Their gestures shrink and their words become edited. The person didn't change, the context did. People perform differently when they feel watched, judged, evaluated, or compared. The social environment either expands someone or compresses them. Once you learn to read this, you stop taking behavior at face value and instead see the pressure shaping it. The more social pressure rises, the more authentic behavior disappears. Social roles also shape behavior. At work, someone might adopt professionalism that hides their true personality. Around family, they may fall back into childhood roles. In a relationship, they may soften or harden, depending on past experiences. In a group, they may adjust to match the dominant energy. These roles are not fake, they are survival strategies. People want safety, acceptance, and predictability, and social roles give them that. A person becomes quieter if they learned that speaking up brings conflict. Another becomes louder if they learn that volume brings control. A third becomes agreeable if they learn that pleasing others brings peace. Before you judge the behavior, ask what the room taught them to be. Even physical context shapes behavior. Lighting affects mood, temperature affects irritability, seating arrangements affect dominance, noise affects anxiety, proximity affects trust. A person sitting in a corner behaves differently than someone sitting at the center of a room. A person facing a door behaves differently than someone with their back to it. These details change how safe or unsafe someone feels, and safety determines everything. People are not reacting to you. They are reacting to how safe they feel around you. If someone seems defensive, ask whether the environment feels threatening. If someone seems distant, ask whether the space feels judgmental. If someone seems quiet, ask whether the room makes speaking up feel costly. If someone seems overly confident, ask whether the group rewards dominance. Behavior is never random. It is always a response to internal emotion interacting with external context. This is why reading the room is just as important as reading the person. Before you interpret someone's tone, body, language, or silence, observe the ground they are standing on. Notice the social hierarchy, notice the power dynamics, notice who they defer to, notice who they avoid, notice who they watch for cues. Group psychology is powerful. People conform to the energy of the group to avoid standing out. They mirror dominant voices to gain approval. They soften themselves to keep the peace. They exaggerate themselves to claim attention. The room shapes the person, and the person shapes the room. Once you understand this, you stop judging behavior as personality. You stop assuming someone is cold, rude, weak, or arrogant. Instead, you recognize the environment that activates those behaviors. This gives you compassion, clarity, and a more accurate read of who they truly are beneath the social mask. And here's the deeper truth. Who someone is in their safest environment is who they actually are. Who they are in their most stressful environment is who their wounds train them to be. If you want to understand someone fully, observe them in both. Social context is the lens through which all behavior must be interpreted. Without the lens, everything blurs. With it, everything sharpens. The environment explains the behavior. The behavior reveals the emotion, and the emotion reveals the person. Chapter 10. The Psychology of Manipulation. Chapter 10. The psychology of manipulation influences fear and control. Manipulation is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it flatters. Sometimes it hides behind kindness. But it always has the same goal: control. People manipulate for one reason. They feel powerless without controlling someone else. That feeling may come from fear, insecurity, desperation, ego, or past wounds. But regardless of the origin, manipulation is never about you. It is about the manipulators need to manage their internal world by controlling their external world. Manipulation begins where honesty feels too risky. A manipulative person rarely says what they truly want. They implay, they guilt, they distort, they flatter. They shift blame. They bend reality until you question your own. The tool they use depends on their personality. Some manipulate through fear, some through affection, some through silence, some through confusion. But all manipulation shares a foundation: emotional pressure. Gaslighting is one of the most powerful forms of manipulation. It works by making you doubt your perception. Suddenly, your memory feels uncertain. Your feelings feel exaggerated. Your reactions feel unjustified. You begin to rely on the manipulator as the voice of reason, even though they are the source of the distortion. Gaslighting doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. A soft, "you're imagining things." A calm, "that's not what happened." A gentle, "you're too sensitive." These quiet phrases can be more damaging than the loud ones because they seem harmless on the surface. Gaslighting doesn't break you at once. It erodes you slowly. Another common tactic is guilt trapping. A manipulator uses your empathy against you. They present themselves as the victim. They twist the narrative so you feel responsible for their emotions. Suddenly, their disappointment becomes your fault. Their suffering becomes your burden. Guilt makes you easier to control because guilt makes you compliant. Then there is love bombing, the tactic of overwhelming someone with affection, praise, and attention to create dependence. It feels intoxicating at first. It feels like connection. It feels like destiny. But what begins as intensity eventually becomes expectation. Love bombing doesn't create love. It creates emotional debt. And when the manipulator decides you haven't paid that debt, they withdraw affection to regain control. This hot and cold cycle keeps people emotionally hooked and confused. Silence can also be a weapon. The silent treatment isn't about space. It's about punishment. It is an attempt to make you feel anxious, guilty, or desperate enough to yield. The silence isn't peaceful, it's strategic. Manipulators also use overclarity or overlogic, flooding you with explanations, details, or arguments to overwhelm your ability to think clearly. When you're confused, you're easier to influence. Confusion creates compliance. But the most important truth about manipulation is this: it only works when you abandon your inner authority. Manipulators don't break strong boundaries. They slip through weak ones. They don't overpower your clarity. They exploit your doubt. They don't steal your freedom. They convince you to give it away. To resist manipulation, you don't need aggression. You need awareness. Notice how you feel after interacting with someone. Do you feel smaller, more confused, more guilty, less certain, less yourself? These emotional reactions reveal manipulation long before the tactics become obvious. Your emotional state after the conversation tells the truth the conversation tried to hide. To protect yourself, stay grounded in what you know. Your memory is valid. Your feelings are information. Your boundaries are real. Your intuition is not the enemy. The more you trust your internal compass, the harder it becomes for anyone to twist your reality. Manipulation is about power. Clarity is power. And the moment you choose clarity, you choose freedom. Understanding people isn't just a skill. It's a shift in how you move through the world. Across these chapters, you've learned to observe before judging, to see emotions before they surface, to hear truth beneath the tone, to read the body's silent signals, and to interpret motives, biases, and environments with clarity. These tools don't make you controlling, they make you conscious. They give you vision where you once had confusion and calm where you once had emotional noise. When you understand people, you stop taking everything personally. You recognize insecurity where you once saw disrespect. You recognize fear where you once saw anger. You recognize stress where you once saw coldness. You recognize wounds where you once saw walls. And that understanding changes you, not because others change, but because the way you perceive them evolves. When you read people clearly, relationships stop feeling like puzzles. Communication stops feeling like conflict. You stop reacting to outro. Once you understand people, everything changes, assumptions, and start responding to reality. You notice patterns that explain behavior. You sense shifts before problems appear. You stay grounded even when emotions rise around you. Clarity becomes your stability. Understanding becomes your strength. And with that strength comes something even more powerful: compassion. Not the soft kind that excuses harmful behavior, but the deep kind that sees the human beneath the reaction. You realize that everyone is carrying something. Everyone is shaped by something. Everyone is protecting something, and everyone is trying in their own imperfect way to feel safe, respected, understood, and connected. The better you understand others, the more you understand yourself. Your reactions expose your wounds. Your triggers reveal your fears. Your patterns show your history. Your empathy shows your growth. The journey of reading people is also a journey of reading your own mind. Now you walk into rooms differently, calmer, clearer, stronger. Not because life is easier, but because you finally see the signals that were always there, waiting for you to notice. Understanding people is a form of power, but the real power is using that understanding with wisdom, not to manipulate, not to control, but to communicate truthfully, connect meaningfully, and live with emotional clarity. Take what you've learned here and practice it. Watch closely, listen deeply, respond consciously. Let every interaction sharpen your awareness, because the moment you choose to understand people deeply is the moment the world becomes easier to navigate and your life becomes profoundly your